Ever since human civilization began, there has always been what's known as a superpower. A superpower state. A state which has the power to crush via hard power, or maybe gently persuade via soft power all other nations to their knees if they so will it. Apart, of course, from other superpowers. And it's pretty sad whenever I think about superpowers, because I'm British, and the last superpower that fell was the British Empire. After that, there was only two superpowers, the United States of America and the Soviet Union. And in 1991, the Soviet Union collapsed, and ever since 91, we have essentially had, the United States has had a monopoly on the world. It is the only current superpower as of 2020. 30 years of dominance. However, it seems, as the years and decades pass, especially since the year 2000, that this is changing. As the years pass, as we've talked about in previous broadcasts, the United States seems to be entering a period of decline. Political instability, multiple political factions, hard left Marxists destroying history. It seems like the United States is not so spontaneously combusting from within. And meanwhile, on the other side of the world, China, a country which just a few decades ago had the majority of its population in poverty, where the sight of a mango was seen as prosperity, is currently on the rise and is set to overtake the United States in terms of gross domestic product in the coming years, which of course it should, if you look at it per capita, considering it has about 5 times the population. But regardless, it's still impressive how China seems to be on a rise that is meteoric, unprecedented in human history. Now, it wouldn't really be that worrying if China was kind of like the United States. It would just be a sort of another United States, if you would. But China is not like the United States. It's not democratic. The people can't elect the leader. It's a totalitarian dictatorship all around. And there hasn't been, for many, many years, ever since the Soviet Union, a totalitarian regime out there. But it's not really comparable to the Soviet Union, because the Soviet Union was essentially in decline for many, many years. China is on the rise. It's only getting more powerful. Its people aren't really following communism. It's a sort of warped version. They're not starving. There is stores. They embrace capitalism, and they use it to benefit themselves. And so today we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about if China will overtake the United States, both economically and culturally. And by culturally, I mean its dominance on the world stage. You know, will people start wanting to speak Mandarin rather than English? Will people, tailor more to the Chinese market rather than the American market? And talk about examples of these, because this has already happened already. Or will China fizzle out? Will China have its own period of uncertainty and upheaval? Or will the United States get its act together? Well, obviously we don't know the answers to any of these, but I have some predictions myself. But what do you think overall about the current state of China versus the United States?
I think you should say your thoughts first. I'm not really sure, honestly.
You're not sure?
I think it will probably surpass America and become the next superpower. If you're just kind of looking at how it's going right now.
What would that make you feel like?
It would make me feel a bit scared, because their culture and everything they stand for is just so much different from how we are.
Well, that's a funny point, right? Because we all know China's been around a long ass time. It's been around since like the Romans were around. That's a long time ago. But the China of then is not the China of today. A lot of people don't know the history of China. What happened with China is they had, China's had multiple different dynasties. The history's long, it's very complex. But China had a communist revolution, kind of ironically similar to what's going on in the United States in a way, but much more open. They were literally calling themselves communists under Mao. And they changed everything about their country. And I'm saying transformed it. Even their language, the way that they wrote was changed from traditional to simplified. All their cultural sort of monuments and buildings were very much destroyed by themselves. They remade the state from scratch. And like most communist countries that were following the Soviet Union at the time, it was a shithole. Like, it was a poverty-stricken shithole. And it's only in the last few years have they got their stuff together. But that's only by ditching the sort of Mao communist sort of ideology and embracing capitalism with full force. But they've not... This is the funny thing. It's the only country I can think of that comes to mind where you can pretty much buy and sell well, not buy, because they restrict their citizens. Like, they're economically free in a way, but they're not socially free. Like, I can't think of another country where that happens. Like, Soviet Union, they were both restricted. But in China, this isn't really the case. I mean, it kind of is. But you know what I mean? Like, they're open to the outside world. They're not shut off. There's no iron curtain. And that's sort of their strength. And I think the West can't quite figure them out. But to me, I blame the rise of China. And I say blame as if it's a bad thing, because I think it is. It scares the shit out of me that China is on the rise. Because you can say the United States gets a lot of shit flung at it, right? People like to shit on America, like, oh, they're all fat bastards, they're awful or whatever. But I think that it's like what we were saying, where when you die, you're more appreciated than when you're alive. If like people start to realize what they've lost in a way. Yeah. It's like, I think if America did get deposed and as China superseded it as a superpower, only then would people realize how much the United States actually did for the world that was good. Because if you're at the top dog, as America is right now, if you're in charge, you don't really get many compliments, really. You only people tend to only focus on the negatives, like, the unnecessary wars for oil and the, being the world police and whatnot. But America has done a lot of good in the world as well, promoting its ideals. And I think that if China took over, people would start to realize how fortunate they were really to be under the United States, if you would, because it's the only superpower I can think of that hasn't really tried to. I guess it's unfair to say it's not tried to expand, because American culture is everywhere. I mean, there's a McDonald's within every street corner if you think about it that way. But it's not. It's done so in a mutually beneficial way most of the time. It's not heavy-handed. Like, if America wanted to, they could take over the UK and all of Europe in a day, if they wanted to. But they haven't done that. And they've not done that for decades. China, to me, doesn't seem like the sort of people who... I'm not saying they would do this, because it really is not in their best interest due to nuclear weapons and whatnot. But China does seem like the sort of country where if it can get away with something, it will. I don't know. I just think... We have examples right now of companies who are kowtowing to China. The company that I used to idolize, Blizzard, in games. You know all about this. Massive controversy because they kowtow to the Chinese government, despite being an American company, despite saying to Americans and Europeans, oh, we stand for freedom and human rights, and as soon as our backs are turned, they just backstab that and then you go, fuck it, who cares? McDonald's right now is over here, he's in the United States, talking about how, oh, Black Lives Matter, we're so caring, and meanwhile in China, black people can't go in McDonald's. I mean, what the double standards here are incredible. But that's what I was talking about. The rise of China can be blamed for mostly, ironically, American corporations. And European ones, but mostly American corporations. It's like American corporations sold out their own people in manufacturing. and all the jobs went to China. So they fucked the poor there, but they also fucked their customers because because the Chinese government now has so much clout. If the Chinese government wants something, they're now stuck in a rock and a hard place. They basically have to say, well, sure, okay. And the American government, and especially American conservatives, have been far too lax on this over the decades. The fact that China has been allowed to get away with absolutely everything. I mean, how is it possible that Apple, for example, can manufacture all the products in China using what are essentially human slaves, but yet pay virtually no tax in the United States? Why is the US government not gone, they're fucking us in two ways. They're fucking us by not giving us tax money, and they're fucking American workers by not employing them. I think that's why Trump ultimately ended up getting elected. But these are the people who are to blame. You can't really get angry at the Chinese for taking jobs or getting rich, because if your enemy's that stupid, why would you not take advantage of that stupidity? I mean, if someone gives me a gold bar, I'm going to sell it. Like, I'm not going to keep it and be like, oh yeah, sure. You're handing. America is essentially handed China the keys to the world without realizing it. And it's a failure of corporations, it's a failure of government, it's a failure of everything. And in Europe, we're sort of stuck between both of them. Like, we're literally stuck between them both. European Union, which could have been another superpower, is on the verge of collapse, as proven by the UK leaving it due to its disastrous immigration policy, disastrous economic policy with the euro, and a flood of other things. It's just completely inept. It takes about 20 years for them to make a decision about what colour the bathroom walls should be. The European Union is absolutely useless. That will not survive the coming decades, I predict. So we're kind of, if you assume Europe will devolve back into, individual countries, we're kind of at the mercy of both the United States and China. And I know who I would rather be allies with out of those two. Like, let me be real. A country that makes the McNugget, or a country that is renowned for animal cruelty, human slavery, and eating dogs. I don't know what I'd rather be. But then again, we make the assumption that the United States will always be as it is today. It's not going to be, I don't think. I think the United States will, as it's happening now.
A lot can change from what is happening right now, yeah.
The problem is, right, it's like in business. When you have a monopoly in business, you control the market. Those companies tend to fall because they get lax. They assume that they're holier than thou. And I think America got to that point, as proven by 9/11. How is it, if you think about it, if you really think about this? Like, let's rule out that it's a conspiracy, right? Let's just say it really did happen. Bin Laden and his crew bombed the World Trade Center. Right, let's just say that is actually what happened. How the fuck did that happen? Like, you have a bunch of guys in a desert who bombed like one of the most renowned buildings in the world, in arguably the most renowned city in the planet of a superpower. How the fuck did a bunch of dudes in a desert pull that one off? Like, how on earth did that plane not get shot down? Honestly, like, if 9/11 went the way that it's officially recorded to go, that is really lax security. Like, that is just being like, what the fuck? How did you fail that? Like, what? How did that happen? It's like, I feel like in the year 2000, if we go back 20 years, exactly 20 years to the year 2000, America was on top of the world. There was no one even close. China was nowhere close. It was only starting to rise then. Soviet Union was long gone. They were completely dead in the water. European Union was basically non-existent. Like, they had no competition. Apple, Microsoft, all these companies through the internet revolution, they were making the country hella rich. Like, it was on top of the world. And I feel like ever since the 21st century's begun, it's like America reached its apex. And it's just fell due to its own ego and thinking that the way the world was then will always be the way the world will always be. And it's not the case. Fast forward 20 years now and the world's looking fucking worrying. US looks like it's on the verge of a civil war. China's looks like it's just going to dominate. Think about this. If the US went into a civil war, China is a superpower day one. Like, day one. Because how can America, at war with itself, it would be humiliated on the world stage by itself. Like, no one would trust the United States at that point, or the US government, or anything. It would be viewed as like an unsafe country. Whereas China would be completely stable. Like, I don't. People always talk about the people of China are going to overthrow the Chinese government. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. If you do some research into that country and its surveillance, it's literally like hell on earth. They got a camera everywhere, more cameras than the UK, and that's saying something. You know, they have neighbours reporting each other to the government. They've got a point system, that point system. Fucking hell, it's like an achievement system in a game or something like that. You know, like. No, but I think that they've got a strong grip on power. Not in Hong Kong, but look, what Hong Kong is an example of what happens. You know, when you challenge the Chinese government. British government was talking about taking 3 million Hong Kongers in the UK. I mean, what a weak response that is, right? For people who don't know, the last colony of the British Empire to be given back was Hong Kong, 1997. And we gave that back to them on the basis that Hong Kong would remain free for a set amount of time. And China's clearly fucked that up. They've clearly violated that. And they're doing that because they know that they're going to get away with it. What's the British government going to do? And the answer's nothing. They're just sitting on their hands. The British government should have turned around to China and say, hey, what the fuck are you doing? We made an agreement with you. You're fucking it up. Why don't we call in Europe and America? And we'll sort this out a different way if you're not willing to do it diplomatically. But no, instead they go, oh fuck it, we'll bring them in to us instead. You know, I mean, don't want to poke the lion. You know what I mean? It's weakness all around. Think of coronavirus started in China. Could have easily been dismantled there had it not been for the ineptitude and the lies of the Chinese government. It could have never left China if it was dealt with properly. Because they tried to cover it up, spread to the rest of the world, and led to tons of deaths and tons of economic damage. Like, we couldn't go outside. We've been outside once in months, right? And what is their punishment? Like, what has the United Nations done? Nothing. They've literally got away with murder, got away with thousands of murders. They're even murdering their own people. I mean, the crimes of this state are unbelievable. And what they do to the world is unbelievable, yet they get away with everything. Because America's weak. Europe's weak. No one's going to challenge them. To me, what?
No, I was just thinking that if you even mention or question like why it happened in China, then you're just called a racist.
Well, that's a good point. In the United States, which you would think would be the country who would go, hey, this isn't right, considering the United States is meant to be all about freedom of speech and expression, etc., their own people, the American people, half of them anyway, are so indoctrinated by Marxist agenda that they shout down their own government and their own media shills for China. Imagine that. American media is more pro-China than pro-America. Like, that country is so corrupt to the core due to the Marxists now. And it's like that quote, a house divided cannot stand. Well, China's not fucking divided at all. China's got that China is solid. America is a house of cards. I mean, to me, I don't want this to happen. I got a US flag on the wall. I'm not one of these arseholes who's like, oh, I want America to fall. Well, I don't. It'd be a nightmare if it did. I much prefer... Hey, British Empire ain't coming back anytime soon with this ineptitude. This country is absolutely pathetic. I don't want America to follow the same fate as what Europe has, where it used to be strong and powerful and essentially became this joke, this laughing stock. I don't want that to happen to America as well. I mean, if America had a civil war and it was weakened... But I don't know. If America had a civil war, the Marxists wouldn't win because they don't have any guns. Whereas the Republican and the right-wingers, the true Americans, they do have guns. And I think the average American, if given the choice, you've got to side with Antifa or you've got to side with, I don't know, Trump. I think they would choose Trump. So if they went through that small period of instability and then they got their shit together, it is possible that they wouldn't lose superpower status and that they could properly challenge China. But during these next few years and those years, they're going to be really fragile.
Well, if they got their shit together, they've been so demoralized, so China could just come in and fuck them in the ass, really.
Yeah, but I'm saying until that. Yeah, I mean, look, America's fucked either way in the coming years, because if they don't have a civil war, it's as you say, they're just going to fall into degeneracy. They're just going to lose. They're done for, basically, if they carry on like the way they're doing now, with all these lunatics running the score. Like, the education system is completely corrupt, media's corrupt. Like, they can't carry on. They have to have some. I don't want this to happen, but they have to have some sort of civil war to get their shit together, basically.
Yeah,
but during those years, they're gonna be unstable. So it's like they lose either way.
Yeah, but how could you? I don't know. How could you be a superpower and then people get fired if they had said something racist 10 years ago? I mean, if they even mention something about coronavirus coming from China, then they will just, I don't know.
Yeah, you can't be you can't last long as a superpower if all the established if all the established institutions are on the side of your enemy. Like, that doesn't work. No. I mean, if you think, yeah, it's really weird how superpowers fall, because the way the British Empire fell, if you look at the last two who fell, the way the British Empire fell was simply due to bankruptcy. Like, pretty much the Nazis ended the British Empire, not directly, because it ended after World War II, but Britain was bankrupt in World War II. Its home territory got invaded. I mean, think about that, an empire again, its home territory invaded. That the sun is setting at that point. It couldn't afford to keep its colonies anymore, so made them all independent, or it just couldn't afford to keep it anymore. It was done. Everyone knew it. That's how that ended. Where the Soviet Union ended was similar. It was due to bankruptcy, basically. Like, people had nothing to eat. It was done for. Trust in government was at an all-time low. And a coup happened. United States will not go bankrupt. It will not lose its money. Its companies will be infiltrated by the likes of Tencent and the Chinese government, etc. But it will not go bankrupt. The people won't be starving in the streets. So it's kind of like it will retain economic stability, but its culture and its sort of what America stood for, its freedom of speech, its right to bear arms, the Constitution as a whole, that will be a memory if they keep going the way that they're going now. I don't know. I mean, I wanna come up with like an optimistic viewpoint. That's why I said if they had a civil war, quick civil war, sorted it out, maybe then they'd be on the rise. But it's gonna take a fucking miracle to get America as solid as it once was. They've been so demoralized. But if they don't, the consequences for the world are enormous. Like, if I try to imagine, let's say 2050, China's the only superpower. United States has fallen from superpower status. Hell, might have even split into numerous different countries. We don't know what's going to happen. Well, let's say China's the superpower. How would that affect me? Well, companies would kowtow to China. That means anything the Chinese government wants, they would be forced to implement. What would that be? I know that I'm into games. Games consoles. You couldn't have a games console in China until like 2012 or something. They wouldn't let you buy it. You know what I mean? Essentially a bunch of backwards old Chinese dudes would dictate everything that goes on in the world. And some things might be good. Maybe if they did something about smoking and alcohol, hey, or drugs, hey, big props. But I don't want to be told that I can't own an Xbox because Xi Jinping doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. That seems ridiculous to me. But I don't know. I mean, it scares the shit out of me either way. I just hope. This is the best case scenario, right? This is the dream scenario. United States people realize, the hard left, the Marxists in America are really they get exposed. The average American goes, you know what? Fuck them. I don't want them anymore. The media gets pro-American again. The education system gets all these gender studies degrees thrown out. The races are no longer at war with each other. Feminism's gone away. The way of the dodo. America's got back to being united and great. And what made them the country in 1969 that put a man on the moon, right? Like, they've not regressed. They've gone back to they've took the good parts and gone back to that. And China has a massive revolution and it becomes democratic and everyone just hugs and sings and goes, oh, this is amazing. You know,
No more eating dogs.
no more eating dogs. No more Shih Tzus going in the pan. You know, and, you know, like that would be great, wouldn't it? That would be like, yes, but that's about as likely as the European Union doing something about immigration to prevent its collapse. Not going to happen. European Union would rather collapse than do something about immigration. So, you know, it's like, realistically, before we get to what the people think, if I had to make a prediction, right? If I like had to put money on the table, if I had to make a prediction what will happen in the next few years, I think a civil war will happen in the United States. I think it'd be quick. I think the Marxists would lose, but the country would never be the same again. I think a lot of freedoms would be lost. I think the American government would, even the conservative side, would take a lot of freedoms away and call it temporary, like martial law style. I think the world would become very suspicious of America. I don't think China will have a revolution. I think it will be solid. And I think the next century will basically be defined as the latter half of the 20th century was, with the United States versus China. Though this time they're on hard mode because China ain't no Soviet Union. They've got the money alongside it. I think that's what's going to happen. I think the US will survive. I think it will be a superpower. See, we've phrased this in a way that there can only be one superpower. It's not true. It's not China or the US. It can be both at the same time. But I think that's what's going to happen. I don't think it'll just be China. I don't think it'll just be America. I think it'll be both. And I think that's what's going to happen. The United States will not be. It will not be as free and open as it once was. I think it'll be a lot more violent, a lot more angry. But but after the war that they have, I think it will still be America.
It wouldn't be America without its freedoms.
No, I'm not saying. I don't mean that people won't be able to say what they want, like in the UK, which is basically a police state. I mean, they'll still. I mean things like law enforcement will be much more heavy-handed. The army would be much more heavy-handed. I mean things like that, like any like the Red Scare, right? Any Marxists or communists would be like they would be Guantanamo'd, basically. I think that's what would happen.
Sounds pretty good to me. I
know it sounds pretty good to me as well. But you know, after a war, the winning side will not have. They've won. They have no need to negotiate anymore. You know, I think it would be like the Democrats would be like Republicans light, and the Republicans would be like proper right wing. But I think the country would be scared a lot more. People would, because they have an enemy again. Like it would basically just be a rerun of US versus the Soviet Union again. I think that's what's going to end up happening. But America will have to go through a significant transformation for that to happen. Otherwise, it just collapses. But hey, that's the. If you're an optimist, you'll think that's what's going to happen. If you're a pessimist, you'll think the United States will just get owned by Marxists and collapse, and China will be the superpower. If you're a super optimist, you'll think that America will have the Civil War, it'll go back to being great again, and then China will collapse. Personally, I'm in between. What do you think? If you had to make a prediction, what's going to happen this century? Go on, put your money on the table.
Yeah, I probably think there will be some sort of civil war.
Who would win?
Honestly, I'm gonna say that the people with the gender studies degrees, they'll probably win.
They'll win? Why? What makes you say that?
Because I don't have much hope.
Oh, the Marxist propaganda's really got into you. You think that people who can't wipe their own ass and think there's 50 genders,
but there's so
the Chaz people.
There's so many of them.
Oh, not enough for
everywhere.
Who's president of the United States right now?
Donald.
Yeah, so not enough. Donald did lose the popular vote, mind you.
Yeah, I know.
But he did in terms of states. If you spread them all out, it's only people like that who live in cities.
Yeah, but there's so many. Like the majority live in cities.
I think you underestimate a lot of people live in the country in the US. I don't think that real Americans.
Normal people come out and apologize for something they did 10 years ago.
I don't think normal people do that. I think celebrities do that because they don't want to lose their wealth and fame. I don't think an average person in America is indoctrinated.
Every single company has.
Every company is indoctrinated, but that's because they're thinking about wealth. It's not because they're actually politically indoctrinated. All the establishments that took over, but the average American, as proven by Trump's victory, is clearly sick of this. I think Trump will win this year. I think he'll win. I really do.
I think the USSR will win with the demoralization.
I think you're demoralised and I'm not demoralised. I have hope for America. There's no fucking way a bunch of... Remember, a lot of the... Gotta think about this, right? You gotta think realistically. If America had a civil war, the people in the country, cities are reliant on the country for food, they're reliant on the country for electricity and for water. Cities are all corporate, it's all tertiary as we call it in the UK. It's not primary and secondary. All the resources are in the country. You think farmers are social justice warriors? They ain't. They're overwhelming like proper Americans. If realistically, if America went to a civil war, there's no way these college-going bourgeoisie socialists would have a chance. Like they would ruin their cities. They would graffiti like, down with America, like on fucking walls or whatever. But that's about it. As soon as the National Guard went in there or something, no way.
I hope so. But
come on, there's no way they'd win. I tell you what. I will make an announcement on air right now, right? And people can quote me on this. I promise you this is true. If the United States have a civil war, right, and if the Marxists win, I'll cut my balls off.
No, you won't.
I will. No, I know you don't, but 100% I will. But that's how confident I am. There's no way the Marxists would win if they had a civil war.
Even if they do, you're not cutting them off.
No. I mean, when I say so, let me clarify now. I got the clarifications right. I mean, when I say civil war, I don't mean culture war like now. I mean a proper civil war. I'm talking like the people are actually properly going at it.
Actually, if they did win, you'd probably be forced to cut your balls off.
Exactly. So that's why I said it. But really, if you think about it, right? I don't mean a Cold War like propaganda like now, where it's like elections and all that bullshit. I'm talking a proper war, like they're going at it with each other, like literally on the streets, militias all across the country. Like there is no business anymore. It's like it's wartime. It's go time. I don't mean a culture war, because the left would win a culture war because their propaganda is so in. They've already won that. They've already took over all the establishments. That's why I say I
hope the good people win, but in the end, it's always the evil people that win.
Well, that's the thing with America, right? If they carry on having a culture war, the Marxists will win, and I don't have to cut my balls off if that happens. But if they have a civil war, if they escalate it, they will not win. America will be all right then. And by the way, this is the thing. Some pricks will say, Are you saying that you want America to have a civil war? Are you promoting warfare? No. I would much rather if every American woke up and was like, "Oh, our country's fucked. Maybe we should fix it. Maybe we should all hold hands and hug and pat Shih Tzus and go back to being, be great, right?" But I'm thinking, like, I don't want this to happen. I'm thinking what will happen. I'm making a prediction here. So that's my prediction. But I do think there will be a civil war. And as I said, if there is a civil war, I think the real Americans would win. And then there would be two superpowers in the world, China versus US, and it would just be a constant struggle between the two. Hey, it could be the plot of Fallout 4. Maybe they have a nuclear war as well, and then we end up getting fucked.
You'll probably be dead as well.
I don't want that, but yeah, I hope that. That's something that's really worrying. If there is two superpowers, China and the US, would we be back in that state where we're scared that there's going to be a nuclear war, like Cold War 2?
Well, we better get a letter from Overtake then.
I know, jeez. Hey, Overtake, if you're listening, you need a radio host down there because it's going to be boring. Real talk Volt. All right. Anyway, we asked the people. What do I ask them?
Will China surpass the USA and become a superpower? If so, what would the consequences for the world be?
Yeah. So. I think that's a pretty spot on question. Names and what they said.
Sammy999 is here 2552 said,
Great name.
Short answer, yep, someday. Consequences. America has much more to fear from itself than from China.
I'd agree with that, yeah. I mean, pretty much, yeah. Kinda. I mean, that's really complicated. Yeah, the US is basically destroying itself. You are right there, but China is contributing towards that. It's not the cause, but it's contributing. It's making it worse. Yeah, the United States has to sort itself out before it even had a hope, dealing with China, because they're united and the United States isn't. But yeah, I probably agree with that.
50 Shades of Dorian said, in my opinion, China is already a superpower. Look at how much of the worldwide manufacturing they do. If they decided to stop manufacturing things for the rest of the world, we would be up something creek with no paddle. Yeah.
I can tell that you don't understand that English / American phrase, do you? Right, basically it means we're fucked. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's okay. Factually, it's not a superpower right now. It's an emerging superpower. But I understand if you want to see it that way. Yeah, you're right. It's unbelievable. It's such a good point, actually. It's unbelievable to me how American companies and European companies just gave away all our manufacturing away, basically, to an authoritarian dictatorship at the other side of the world, just to enrich themselves. Greed really is the downfall of society at large. I mean, the rich, I'm going to sound like fucking Bernie Sanders again here, but the rich make themselves richer, and what happens to the poor? They get fucked. And we see this in England. I talked about this, I think, when did I talk about this? The North-South divide. I don't know, I can't remember, but I always talk about it. It's all I ever fucking talk about. I talk about it in my sleep because it annoys me so much. But in the UK, in England specifically, the north of England's really poor, south of England, especially London's really rich. The north did manufacturing jobs, and the south typically didn't. They did normal corporate tasks. And when businesses realised they could go to places like China, all the jobs disappeared in the 80s, and basically the average northerner was shit out of luck. And then the north today is still ridiculously poor because of this compared to the south, and a lot of people are really angry, and a lot of people are really bitter about that. And it's incredible how some people are willing to enrich themselves but not their employees. It reminds me of these CEOs that have a fucking $20 million a year salary, and meanwhile their workers are getting paid minimum wage. It's like, Jesus, I really do sound like Bernie Sanders now, but it really does piss me off. It's just unnecessary.
Okay, and Mr. Quick A02 said, China already is a superpower.
Is that it? It's not. It's not a superpower. It's an emerging superpower. Some people might say, "Oh, what's the difference? Who determines that?" It's not. China couldn't take on the United States now. It's not. It's not got its tentacles in everything just yet, but it is getting there. It's very close to it. Well, I don't know. Maybe I'm just being a bit technical there, but I don't really blame people for saying China is a superpower.
If Homer was God, said, China definitely is already a superpower. Just wait until India gets its shit together. America's influence is waning.
Yeah, but India and China are very different. No, you never hear about, oh God, is India going to be a superpower? Oh, I'm really scared. You don't hear that, because India's a democracy, right? India is not a dictatorship. Indians are nice people. Indians get a lot of shit from the world. Yeah, the country isn't the best. I wouldn't go there. I wouldn't visit there. I wouldn't want a holiday there. I know a guy. Funny story this. I actually know a guy who does business. I think I told you about him. All around the world. He was in India for months doing some business trip. I've not asked him how it was because I've not been able to speak to him, but I'd love to know. But yeah, it's anyway. Besides the point, Indians are nice folks. I'm not saying the Chinese aren't nice folks, but because they have a totalitarian government, they're very indoctrinated. Remember, in China, you can't use the internet, right? So unless someone went on the Chinese internet and somehow posted this from YouTube via a VPN and then put it on their internet, no one would even be able to listen to this. Indians can listen to this. In fact, I'd wager if this clip got, let's say, even something mediocre as 1,000 views, one of them would be an Indian. And they don't have to go through hoops to listen to us. Like, Indians are yeah, sure, there's a class system as there is in most ex-British colonies, including the UK itself. But even if India got its shit together and became wealthy and had sort of a cultural overhaul, I wouldn't be up at night for them. I'd be like, yeah, it's cool. I hope India gets the shit together. China worries me because their government has so much power over the citizens, restricts them from using the internet that the rest of the fucking world uses, puts points on them, spies on them, puts them in concentration camps. I'm not that worried about India. Like, it's not about... See, the comment there... Maybe I'm looking into this too much, but it seemed like it was pleased that the United States was losing influence. Like, oh, just wait. It's like, I don't want that to happen. It's not about other countries getting more powerful. It's about China and its cult and the way it is being really scary. No one would be worrying if China was a democracy and it was like the rest of the world. It would just be, people would be like, yeah, good. Who cares? It's just another United States at that point. But yeah, anyway.
A bunch of random letters said China will definitely be a superpower, but a bipolar or a multipolar world can be a good thing too.
Well, that's pretty much exactly what I was saying there. It's like, I would argue, yeah, it's maybe not in a post-nuclear world. It's good to have multiple superpowers. That can get quite scary, but yeah, it is pretty. Usually, it's like in business. It's good to have multiple companies, and so there's no monopoly. Because if the monopoly sucks, then the world sucks, right? Because no one can compete with them. But in the case of China, their situation does suck. And if they were the monopoly, the world would suck, right? So that's the whole point. That's why I like. Who cares if India was a superpower? Great, good. Who cares if the European Union was a superpower? Well, if it sorted its shit out, right? Then it would be like, who cares, right? But China's a different story. It's a different kettle of fish there.
It's a muffin said, they already are.
No, they're not. But isn't it strange how many people think it is? Like, officially, China's not a superpower. It's classified as emerging as of 2020. But it's really fascinating how many people just take it for granted that it is. Goes to show just how solid China is. Because if you would have said China's a superpower 20 years ago in the year 2000, we would have laughed at.
A.G. Smith 95 said, I see what you're doing here, Xi Jinping.
You got me! Is that it?
No, there's one with such a disgusting username. I'm not gonna say it.
Go on, say it.
No, absolutely not.
People are gonna
refuse.
People are gonna wonder what it is.
Absolutely refuse.
I'll read it.
That one. Okay, so I'm gonna read it. No, don't say it. I don't want you to say that.
What do you mean? What? Are you Xi Jinping? I don't want you to say that. All right, how about you say a word and I say a word?
Okay.
All right. I'll start.
I will start, okay. Lick.
Clits.
Suck.
Nips. Okay, there we go. That's his name. Who the fuck would pick that name? What's wrong with you? Here we are, trying to be taken seriously. We're in this studio like, oh yeah, here we are talking about the serious problem of China and the superpower. And meanwhile, you come around. I hope he said something really intellectual. Please tell me.
To have a communist world power is a bad thing because it means it will eventually normalize a lack of human rights and freedom.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, thanks for your comment there. But no, but it's true. Like, I wouldn't worry about India. Not worried about the United States. Wouldn't really worry about the European Union. Well, I would in some ways, but the European Union will not be a superpower. It will not survive. I'm almost certain of that.
You'd worry about them for other reasons.
Yeah, I'd worry about them for other reasons, but
living there.
Yeah, living in it, that'd be a nightmare. But yeah, there's a response to that. What is that response to? What's their name?
Fuck off, you ass, 87 said, because America is such a bastion of human rights and freedom, right?
compared to China, yeah. I mean, last time I checked, United States en masse doesn't put large chunks of its population in concentration camps. Last time I checked. You see, I bet he's American. I put money on the table, he's American. And the reason I say that is because Americans never realise how good they've got it. You know, in the UK, we have what's called hate speech laws, which is like something out of like medieval times, where you get beheaded if you insult the king. Whereas if you say certain things, you get fined. I always use Count Dankula in the pug video.
You can't even have a knife, right? Like as defense if you're a woman.
Oh, well, forget the First Amendment. No freedom of speech here. What about... No, women can't even have pepper spray anymore.
That is ridiculous.
Yeah, imagine that. Imagine flooding a country.
How unsafe you must feel as a woman if you have to go out at night then.
Oh, well, they don't, do they? I don't know if you can have... I don't think you can have pepper spray. You can have a knife.
And they're supposed to be a feminist and progressive country.
Do you want to know? Do you want to know how I learned you can't have a knife, right? I remember this. This was years ago when I was like 10 or something, right? And I wanted to walk from one family member's house to another. And it was getting evening. It wasn't night, but it was getting there. It's like in winter, you know, like at 6 when it starts to turn night, like that sort of dusk thing where the sky's like dark blue. Mm-hmm. And I was scared to walk there, right? So I thought, okay, I know what I'll do. I'll go in the kitchen and I'll get a little knife. Just put it in my pocket. So if anyone tries to like, I don't know, harass me or something, I just bring the knife out and at least it's some defense. And before I got out there, I was stopped by my parents and they're like, "What are you doing?" I was like, I'm going to the other family member's house, and they were like, "You can't take that outside, will you? What are you doing?" And I was like, "Why not? I'm not gonna go around stabbing people. It's just in case someone tries to stab me, right?" And they were like, "No, you don't realise if you take that out there, and you got caught with a knife on you in public, you would probably be put in like a care home or something like that, or they would be fined, I'd have some criminal record or something."
But, I mean, we could use the force, right?
Oh, yeah, don't get me started on that crap. No, but isn't that crazy? So, like, I had no intention, obviously. What you're going to do, rob some granny in the street? Like, obviously I had no intention of using the weapon. It's just like a deterrent, but you can't do that here. How on earth? Like, but the thing is, people always say, who, like, "Oh, yeah, but if you had a problem, wouldn't you just be able to call the cops?" It's like, they take, like, are you joking? They take the British police. They take like an hour to appear if they're asked.
Yeah, but imagine being a young woman and then a group of men come.
Exactly. That's the thing. It's like a lot of Americans don't realise. I know you can't go around with a fucking AK-47 in the street, right? But a lot of Americans don't realise that you have a lot of freedom and liberty. That even in the UK, which you would consider to be a so-called free country, it's not. Like, you underestimate like how special your country is in ways. Like, it's like I hate that about Americans in a way. Like, my biggest complaint with Americans is how critical they are of their own country and how much they don't realise how fortunate they've got it. And I find that the only people who realise this are the people who move to America from other countries. A lot of Chinese immigrants are really angry about this. They say, like, "Are you fucking serious? Like, where I come from, you get put in a concentration camp, and meanwhile you fuckers are saying you live in a police state, right? Because, well, why? Why? You know what I mean?"
I mean, we live in the Western world and we can see that. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, but we come from very special countries in the Western world, though, right? Sweden, the fucking social justice capital, and the UK, where in the UK you need right, Americans, you won't believe this, in the UK you need a license to watch television. It's called television license. It's a true story, this, right? So I had a family member who worked with a lot of Americans, and he was telling them, like, the Americans were saying, like, "Oh God, I can't," they were complaining about health and safety. They were like, "Oh, I can't believe how much regulation there is here. You guys need to cut the red tape." And another one was like, "Yeah, soon you'll need a TV. Soon you'll need a license to watch television." And the guy in my family was like, "Oh, you do? It's called television license." And the Americans were gobsmacked. Their mouths were like to the floor, and they were like, "Are you serious right now?" They couldn't believe it. And it's Google it, television license. This is true. You have to pay what's the equivalent in US dollars of £250? Like $300 a year. $300 a year in the UK to have a cable television in your house. Or they send people to your house called TV license agents, and they go in your house and check that you do not have a television. I'm not making this up. Type in on YouTube, TV license man, and you'll see this is a big revolution in the UK of people refusing to pay it because it's bullshit. It's like something out of the fucking Gestapo. And oh, by the way, you might wonder why is that? The money goes towards funding British Broadcasting Corporation, which quite literally is Marxist propaganda. Like, Doctor Who is now a woman. That should tell you everything you need to know. So, Americans, you don't realise how lucky you have it. Like, it's just... you are really lucky to be born in the United States. No, in many ways, your healthcare sucks. Right? A lot of things aren't great. But overall, compared to a lot of places in the world... For what I care about, you're lucky. I mean, Jesus Christ, we do radio. We're talking. To do radio, you have to be able to talk. If I had to question, like, oh, will this get me in trouble with the government? That is not good. That's not real talk. That's censored talk, right?
Should rename the channel.
I know I should really. Hey, no, but if I'm being for real, it wouldn't surprise me. If we did loads of episodes, like we did this for years, like loads of episodes of Real Talk, it wouldn't surprise me if the British government tried to poke their nose in somehow, even in just a little way, like a little slap on the wrist, like, don't say that about government. Boris's hair doesn't look like diarrhea. Don't say that. Right? Like, that wouldn't surprise me. But in America, I know I would never have to worry about that. Well, unless the Marxists took over. But anyway, there you go. God, I got a headache thinking about fucking Chinese people, Marxists, in the British government now. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Right, anyway.
Maybe it's just the heat.
Maybe it's what?
Just the heat.
I'm not any.
Heat.
Oh, heat? I thought you said just eat. That's like a takeaway thing. I'm going to say. I want some McNuggets now.
Not made of dogs.
No, definitely not. I feel sorry for the Chinese people. Imagine. Right. How many Chinese people are there? 1.5 billion. There's like 7 billion people on the planet, so you had a pretty high chance of being Chinese. Like, I could have been Chinese, you could have been Chinese. God, I feel sorry for them. Like, when I say negative things about China, I mean the government mostly. I feel sorry for the people. Like, they're just like prisoners in a way. But they would say the same about us, which is just blows my mind. Yeah.
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 It could be worse.
Yeah, we could be Swedish. Right, anyway, see you later. You like that?
I did not.